Welcome back to Commerce Diaries. I hope you all are doing well. In the today's video, we are going to learn about one important but very interesting concept in the research aptitude which comes in our general paper 1. That is the concept of variables. So let us begin with this. First, concept of variables. Research concepts should be capable of assuming a different values. Variables are nothing but values. Here, a term indicates indicators and variables come into the picture. Anything capable of assuming a different value is known as a variables. When we are doing our research study, we will assume something for our conclusion or getting our final result. So that particular assumptions or that particular values are called as a variables. It vary from the situation to situation as well as a person to person. That's why it is called as a variable. Variables are the indicator which will be different from situation to situation, or it will give a different result in each of the process. Variables are the measurable factors in the research. These are the measurable factors that we have to remember. Let's take an example of the variable. In this situation, if the richness or poorness is depend upon the asset value and the annual income of the person, the asset values and the annual incomes are the variables. So here, if we want to study about the richness or the poorness of the person, so in this case, if our variables are, or if our measurements are that the asset values and the annual income of the person, so in this case we will measure the richness and the poorness of the person on the basis of this asset values and the annual income. Okay, so this would be our variables in this scenario. Variables are further classified as follows. There are a few types of the variables that we will look into the detail. Here I have given this chart so you will able to remember the types of variables. The first is the independent variable, second one is dependent variable, the next is extraneous variable, then confounding variable, constant variable, and last one is determinious variable. Okay, we might aware about these two variables, so let us look into all the variables in the detail. First type is that independent variable. It is also known as manipulated, experimental, or treatment variable. This is important point over here. This kind of the names we can expect in examination, so we have to remember this. Independent variable is also known as manipulated, experimental, and treatment variables. They become the cause of the another variable. So in our research experiment, independent variable are the prime cause for any outcome. It is the variable manipulated by the researcher in the experiment. It can be manipulated in the research process. Independent variable are treated as a cause in experiment. This is also important point. This is the keyword for the independent variable. If you find any kind of the statement in the research or in any kind of the case study, if this particular thing or this particular variable is cause, so we should understand that variable is independent variable. Then next, dependent variable. It is also called as the outcome or the response variable. This is important point over here. Dependent variable is also called as outcome or response variable. The depend variable is the variable that changes a result of the change made on the independent variable. So as we have seen that independent variable is a cause in our research experiment, so in that way dependent variable is a effect or it is an outcome in our experiment which is happened due to the effect of the independent variable. Dependent variable is treated as the effect of the experiment. This is also important, and this is a keyword for our dependent variable. That is, dependent variable is the effect in the any kind of the research experiment. So let us understand these two variables very clearly with the example. Here you can see this picture. We can see that here a one research experiment is taken. What the experiment is given are the test scores impacted by the amount of the time spent sleeping the night before a test. Okay, so this is our research topic. So in this, or this is our experiment. So in this kind of the experiment, you can see time spent on sleeping is independent variable over here, and the test score that we are getting as the outcome is a dependent variable. So in this experiment we can manipulate it, the time spent on the sleeping. If we are taking a time as a 8 hours, so we can manipulate it for the 12 hours, or we can manipulate it for the 10 hours. So this is in our hand. We can manipulate it, or we can just change the number of hours that student is spending on the sleep time. So this we can manipulate it. So this is a independent variable. So based on that, this variable, our dependent variable, that is the test score, will affect. If any student getting enough sleep, let's say he will get 8 hours sleep before his examination, so his score of the examination will improve. He might get a grade in his examination. If here we will add number of hours in experiment, if let's take a 10 hours, then here we can expect the result as a plus score. So as we are changing, or as we are manipulating the independent variable, that will show the effect on the dependent variable. So independent variable is a cause for our experiment, and dependent variable is effect or the outcome for any kind of the research experiment. So this was about the dependent variable and independent variable. Then next, intervening variable. This is also termed as a mediator variable. Mediator variable we can find in our research process. They establish the link between the independent variable and the dependent variable. This is important over here. Intervening variable, as the name is given, we can treat it as a mediator. It can be a link between independent and dependent variable. These variables through which one variable is affect to the another variable. These are the helpful to understand the process. If we have a cause and reason in our experiment, but we need a link to build a relationship between the one independent variable and other dependent variable, so that link or that variable which creating the relation between the two variables, that we will treat it as an intervening variable. So let's see the example. In the teaching and learning process, the curriculum or the syllabus plays the important role, and that is the intervening variable. Is, as we can see, if we treat it as a teacher, is a independent variable, as the teacher is teaches, so he can manipulate his teaching style, that will affect on the students. So student result would be a outcome here, so that will be a dependent variable. But in the teaching learning process, teaching and learning, building a relationship between them because of the curriculum, because without the curriculum, there we can't establish the relationship between the teacher and learner, or teaching and learning. So in short, the intervening variable is creating a link between the dependent and independent variable. The next type is that extraneous variable. In the real life situation, there can be many factors or the variables that may affect the outcome. These variables are termed as the extraneous variable. If we are doing any kind of the research, we may find dependent variable, independent variable, and intervening variable also. But apart from these three main reasons, there can be another aspect also which include in the experiment, so that we will treat it as an extraneous variable. Extraneous variable also affect the dependent variable, although these are not manipulated by the researcher. As the name given, we can understand that extraneous means something extra in our research process. Extraneous variable are undesirable, means these kind of the variable we not necessarily needed in our research, but they are there because the many factors affect our research study. So here example is that smoking caused lung cancer. In this situation, the age group of the people who does smoking is treated as an extraneous variable. As we see in this example, smoking caused a lung cancer. Whether any kind of the people doing smoking, if they are between the any kind of the age group, let's say they are the teenager, they may be adults, or they may be a old age group, the smoking will give the same reason or same effect over the all age group person. Here if we are doing differentiation between the people on the age group, so age group would be considered as the extraneous variable. This is undesirable over here because smoking shows the same effect on all the people. Then next is that confounding variable. It is act like an unwanted variable, and there are the few factors in our research work that will played an unwanted role. It is a confounding variable exists. The researcher usually waste of the time because it divert the study and it will lead not to drawing any valid conclusion. In our research process, we will find many things that will divert our study, or we may not reach at our conclusion due to the some unnecessary things. Those unnecessary things or those unwanted variables we will call as a confounding variable. It is a variable to avoid this variable in the research study. So it is advisable that the researcher should avoid this kind of the variables in his research process. Let us understand the confounding variable with the example. Impact of the stress level on the student. In the study, the diet taken by student is treated as a confounding variable. If impact of the stress level on the student would be our research topic, so in this research topic we can easily differentiate it in independent variable and dependent variable. But in this study, if we are taking the diet which is taken by the students, would be deviated our conclusion from what we want to get the result in our research process. So diet is a factor or diet is a variable which is unnecessary in this kind of the research, but if still we are taking that particular factor, so that will divert our conclusion or that will divert our end result. So these kind of the factors, these kind of the unnecessary factors, we will treat it as a confounding variable. Then next, constant variable. As name given, constant variable are the factors which are the constant throughout our study. Thus that kind of the factor will not change in our whole research work. The variables that are controlled in the research process, which comprises of only one value, for example the type of the flower used in the experiment. So if we are doing any kind of the experiment on the growth of the flower or the growth of the particular kind of the plant, so in this kind of the research or in this kind of the study, the particular kind of the plant or particular kind of the flower which we selected will be a constant throughout the study, so that we will treat it as a constant variable. The factor that can be controlled in a nature and the factor that is unchanged throughout our study, so that is called as a constant variable. Then last type is that Determinious Variable. This variable shows the categories This is a keyword for the Determinious Variable categories in the research. For example, male, female, and others, and the blood groups. So let's take an example. If we are taking population, so we will differentiate that population in the category, either it can be a male, either it can be a female, or we will categorize in others category. Okay, so apart from these three category, we can't able to differentiate our population because we have a certain limitations of the categories, that is we will treat it as a Determinious Variable. In the other example, blood group, if we have a sample of the blood groups, so blood groups we can either differentiate it in the A positive, A negative, B positive, B negative, O positive, O negative, or maybe AB positive or AB negative. So we have a limitations for this category. Apart from this category, we cannot differentiate it our blood groups. So these kind of the variables we treat it as a Determinious Variable. So Determinious variables are basically the variables or the categories in our research. So this was about the today's video. This was about the types of the variables and the concept of the variable. If you like this video, if you like my presentation, don't forget to give a review in the comment box, and also like my video and subscribe to my channel Commerce Diaries. Thank you. We will meet in the next video.